Most of you think that advanced or traditional agriculture is a good thing and a good choice, as well as a clear sign of something advanced like an advanced culture and/or economy. If you would be critical and have an advanced understanding of nature and degenerative disease epidemics, or degenerative-disease-expansion, in fact of soils would suffice, you would see that agriculture is degenerative and degradative, almost like per definition, and in a way it is associated with collapse and/or death, and makes food less nutritive and less favorable for health. You know what that means, and will lead to the end of a line and possibly to extinctions, that is after at least hundreds of years, with the whole cycle being thousands of years. The thing is, we most probably have been in such a cycle of soil degeneration or soil degeneration and running up to a soil degeneration-glacial for thousands of years, in fact over 10,000 of years. This was associated with loss of climate regulation or Carbon-Agroforest-Climate-Regulation. This soil degeneration and loss of climate regulation puts us increasingly at risk for a soil degeneration collapse or soil degeneration collapse, and even a soil degeneration glacial or a soil degeneration glacial. If you pay attention to Michael Buttons's videos, or anything with temperature graphs at the poles for at least the last 400,000 years, you will have noticed that all former interglacials stayed around for a few thousands of years, but never much longer than 10,000 years. That certainly has to do with quite steady, millions of years, cyclicity and at least in part with the Milankovitch-Cycles, but there are videos, including of the Origin for Existence or Origin for Existence YT channel, that evidence that traditional agriculture leads to warming, this even more so than black naked asphalt roads and highways do. Warming ultimately can cause the poles to reach 2 degrees Celsius, in other words past the melting point of the still present ice. When the poles reach 2 degrees Celsius a number of things most probably will happen, at least, it was so in the last 4 glacial or ice age cycles or the last 400,000 years. One particular thing that most certainly is involved is the weakening or collapse of the AMOC. A weakening or collapse of the AMOC is quite complex, and can be caused by more than just meltwater flowing to the oceans. Even when all ice is melted and the AMOC did not collapse or weaken, simple warming of the superficial oceanic water could cause it or could cause it once again. But the end result of the poles reaching 2 degrees Celsius seems to be that the Earth collapses in an ice age of roughly 100,000 years, that is so at least if the time, in fact the cycle, for it is due, and the cycle seems to be more due than on any other moment during the last 400,000 years. Since right now the time for it is due, we know what could or most probably will happen when the poles reach 2 degrees Celsius for a number of years or when a nuclear winter would occur. In this case we could dive into a 100,000-year ice age in a matter of weeks, or in fact days. If you want to know more, please search for soil degeneration and or Carbon-Agroforest-Climate-Regulation in YouTube. By the year 2050 90% of our all agricultural soils will be degraded or unproductive exactly because of this soil degeneration. One needs no rocket science to know what only 10% of food production will mean for 8 billion humans plus animals. We are also subject to yet amongst others resources, as well as the challenges caused by jet stream weakening or instability. One also does not need rocket science to see where we are heading with degenerative diseases or Life-Expectancy-Collapse and Degenerative-Disease-Expansion. A possibly irreversible collapse and decrease of life expectancy was recognized by certain scientists roughly around 2015. And we see it in the figures appearing around 2020, and the life expectancy keeps on falling when weighing the line. The only way to reverse soil degeneration or to maintain agricultural land productive is by means of transforming agricultural land in carbon-agroforest. If forest would be involved, ideally forest gap dynamics or carbon-agroforest-farming would be practiced, which is a modern version of stump-based farming. In this case only a fraction, somewhere between 5 and 20%, of the forest area is involved in agroforestry or carbon-agroforest-farming. Such a pattern with between 5 and 20% of the forest not being a climax forest is natural even in primary and or climax forests, including in the Amazon forest, including before it was not yet disturbed by humans by means of selective logging or, even, more destructive practices.